The name of the veteran being interviewed is Chris Learned. His birth date is July 26, 1972. He served in the Gulf War in the United States Marine Corps. His highest rank achieved is Lance Corporal. This interview took place in Davis, California on November 30th, 2015. The interviewer is Connor Judd, conducting this interview for Da Vinci Charter Academy. Also assisting this interview are Rayna Velasquez and Benjamin Jewell. The interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So first, let's start with some basic biographical background questions. Like where and when were you born?
I was born in Redwood City, California in 1972.
All right, now just about your family generally. Who were your family members? What did your parents do?
Yeah,
Talk a little about your
my dad was a butcher. My mom didn't work. I have two sisters, an older sister and a younger sister. And I went to Roseville High School and graduated in 1990.
All right, so did you have any other family members who served in the military?
I did not.
And what were you doing before you entered the service?
I was a senior in high school and just a high school student deciding on what I wanted to do with myself.
And were you drafted or enlisted?
I enlisted. Me and 4 other buddies enlisted at the same time.
So then why did you choose the Marine Corps? What prompted you to do that?
Peer pressure.
So can you talk a little bit about your departure for training camp and how the first days of training went?
Yeah, so for me, I did what's called the early entry program. So you're really within the Marines for like a year, and you go on the weekends to train and learn some different stuff. And then when you go to boot camp, it was pretty brutal. I was kind of a mama's boy, home away from home, and it was pretty scary. Being in boot camp, you don't sleep for the first 3 days. They keep you up on purpose. I have a pretty extensive letter to my parents. I don't even remember writing that like sheds the light on how scary it was for me. I turned 18 in boot camp, so lots of push-ups, lots of running, lots of being woken up, and back again for 3 months.
Yeah. Did you undergo any specialized training?
Aside from being, a Marine myself, I mean, that's specialized in itself, but before we went to the Gulf War, I got to train with recon guys and Amtrak guys and a lot of special type of tactics, getting prepared to go, and because we didn't really know what was going to happen in the Gulf War, so we were trained to do a lot of like urban combat type situations, not your standard military warfare stuff.
Okay. And how was the process of adapting to military life, like the physical aspect and the social aspect?
Well, the physical aspect wasn't tough. I was already been pretty good athlete. The mental part of it, and it doesn't matter how clean something was, it's never clean enough, and they do that on purpose to keep you mentally kind of stressed. So I didn't really hang out with a bunch of military guys. I had local friends and such, but so adapting to military lifestyle was a little difficult for me. It wasn't my cup of tea after I was there.
So then moving on to your wartime service, where was it exactly that you served?
I was stationed in Dhahran in Saudi Arabia at a naval hospital. We really didn't know how long the war was going to go, so we were basically chasing orders, waiting to go to support different areas, but the war was only so long, and I was only there 3 months in Saudi Arabia, and then the war ended.
So what did you do there? Can you tell me any details of your trip abroad?
Yeah.
How it was adapting to life in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, I worked at a naval hospital, and I was a sentry guard. Worked 48 hours on, 24 hours off in a rotating cycle with several other guys. And so we'd stay in basically a corner sandbag unit, protecting people from coming across the wired into the hospital we were at.
Was there any action that you witnessed?
Not war action per se, but there was 3 or 4 incidents of people trying to breach the compound, whether it be by a vehicle, and some of my close friends shot up the car or something like that, but I did not see any direct action myself.
Would you be willing to describe any of those instances, if you're comfortable?
Well, I didn't really see much. It was mostly noise and action. It goes on the radio, and now you're on, you're at the ready trying to figure out if something else is going to happen. And then we did have a couple Scud missiles go over the base, and had to don all the gas mask and mop gear and wait for a couple hours till they decided, things were all clear. That's pretty intense. Like the nighttime one that hit the barracks actually flew over the night I was at watching. We got to kind of see this rocket fly over us. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty scary thing. Like the whole experience was scary because you just didn't know. We weren't told much other than what was going to happen in the next few hours.
Mm-hmm. So, are you interested in talking a little about any bonds you may have formed with fellow Marines, any sense of camaraderie there?
For me, it was difficult. The guys that I joined, they were already in the desert for about 6 months before I even joined with them, so they've already kind of established their friendships. It was kind of like we were the new boots on the ground, and we did the dirty work for them because they were doing it already. Then we get back to base, and they were all ready to go home, and so that kind of bond with my military friends really didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what day specifically you arrived, or when exactly that was?
I do not. I do not know the exact day.
Okay. So while you were overseas, how did you stay in touch with your family and friends back home?
They had phone stations, and most people had their own phone card that you used for the minutes, and you talked on this little station. You can hear a click like every 5 minutes, and made you know they were listening. Mm-hmm. Someone was listening on the phone conversation. It was really interesting. Like today we can talk on our cell phones. My friends call me now I have friends now that are in Kuwait, and they call me on their cell phones, where I had to stand in this long line, and you get so many minutes on the phone. So it was a standard phone, but it was really a rush situation. There was never any privacy.
Yeah, so when you were there, what did you do when you were off duty, like for fun?
Yeah, I played volleyball and just walked around the desert, and there was a little pub, but you can have alcohol in Saudi Arabia, so it was a drinkless pub. People ate soda and hung out and just chatted.
Okay. So where were you exactly when the war ended?
In Dhahran at the naval hospital.
Do you remember what you felt when you heard about that and what that experience was like?
Just free, like fine. Like it was so short. It was shocking. At the same time, we were happy that we were ready to go.
So how did you return home after the war?
We went the same way we went. We went on a FedEx carrier, and we took a FedEx carrier back, and we landed in Camp Pendleton. We were 3 months in quarantine in Camp Pendleton, so we couldn't leave the base for 3 months, just to make sure everyone didn't have any parasites or something that you could have brought back from the Middle East.
Did you leave Saudi Arabia right when the war ended, or was there a period of delay?
It took about 7 days, I think, about a week of inspections and making sure we weren't bringing things back we weren't allowed to bring back, knives and guns and so forth.
So when you arrived home, how were you received by your family and the community?
They're pretty happy to see me. My neighbor actually was a World War I vet, and he flew a flag the whole time I was gone, so he made a big deal to give that to me, and that was a pretty neat experience. But it wasn't as hooray as I thought it was going to be. You just get right back to work, got to get a job, and
So did you sustain any injuries during your time in the Marine Corps?
I did get discharged with I'm 20% disabled now. I have some nerve damage in my back. We don't know if it was caused by the military or just happened over time. So I do have a disability from being in the military.
So how did that and your military service affect your readjustment to civilian life?
It was a challenge because I went in thinking I was going to come out with a lot of. I went in to be a mechanic, and I ended up being an engineer, blowing up things, and I didn't have a lot of. I didn't feel like I had a lot going for me to get a job right away, other than starting at the bottom. I thought I'd have a little thicker application, but I wasn't taught other than to kill people, so it didn't do me very much out in the real world.
So have you stayed in touch with any fellow veterans over the years?
I have 2 friends I talk to once in a while, and then I have made new friends that are in the military that I talk to a lot now.
Are you interested in elaborating on your relation with them? And
well, one friend's a reservist. He's my age, and we were kind of friends before we went in the before I went in the military, and he went in later than I did, and we became really good friends because of just a lot of common age-wise, and then he has a friend who I met who's younger than us, but he's still active. In fact, he's in Kuwait right now, and it's kind of neat talking to him. And it was like 130 some odd degrees last month, and taking pictures. So we just have a lot to talk about and kind of understand each other a little bit more.
Have you become involved with any veterans organizations?
I just joined the American Legion. I'm not sure what I'm getting out of it yet, but we'll see. Probably join the VA or the veterans, some other veterans agency. I don't know yet.
Yeah. If you don't mind jumping back a little
sure.
bit, I'm interested in discussing what you did as an engineer and how that tied into your job in the hospital.
So when I was training to be an engineer, when I first got stationed in Hawaii, I was doing a lot of construction for an air base. Like I would build shipping containers to send rocket engines to another base, or we built all these picnic barbecue areas on the base, that kind of thing, and different maintenance stuff. And then when I went to part of going in the team I was trained in, there was 7 to 8 of us, corpsmen, infantrymen, engineers, because the idea is 7 or 8 of us were going to go out and be a team to do what we needed to do in the urban areas of Iraq, and that just kind of didn't happen for us because we were a little behind. So when I first got to Saudi Arabia, we were part of it was building parts of the hospital themselves, building up these massive like circus tents, and then reinforcing the sidewalls with sandbags and building trenches around areas that needed trenching and stuff like that. So manual, hard labor.
So you mentioned that you were stationed in Hawaii for a period of time.
Yeah, that was my so if you look on most of my documents, if I were to have them to present, that was my essential duty station. So all my stuff was there, even though when I went to the Gulf, all my personal belongings stayed on base.
So how did wartime experiences affect your life after the war, just in general?
Just for me, a different view on what the role of military is, and whether it's even beneficial to have these young kids out there serving as doing the dirty work for our country. I'm proud to be a military guy, but there's the kids that are coming back today are a lot more messed up than I'll ever be. And it's sad to see that. So to me, for a long time I wasn't proud. It wasn't until the last 5 or 6 years that I've really been telling people I was a Marine, for that matter. Just it wasn't a pride. Wasn't a pride thing to me. I'm more proud now. That's for sure.
So what changed what caused you to develop this sense of pride over time?
Well, I am who I am because of my life experiences, and being a Marine is one of them, and I have to accept that as part of who I am, and I am a better person because of becoming a Marine, and I have to draw out what's made me those special parts.
So, what kind of life lessons did you learn through serving in the military?
If you're not early, you're late. Things just, tidiness, clean. I'm very attention to detail now. I was a guy who barely graduated from high school, and now, I graduated I have a master's degree with a 4.0 master's degree. So just attention to detail, completing work. When you commit to something, you do it. There's no, bailing out of it, especially if you're the leader of something that you decided to do. And those things, just cream of the crop type of living. If you're not working hard, you're not working, kind of things.
So for our project, we created a timeline of a lot of events in the Gulf War. They included some UN resolutions as they pertain to the war, the Scud missiles that Iraq launched at the United States barracks and at Israel, and a couple other events, the Highway of Death being one of them. Do you have personal experience with any of these that you could talk about?
I don't, other than, like I said, the night the Scud went over us, and then we knew that it had hit the barracks, and by the time we woke up in the morning, we all kind of knew what had happened. But other than that, when you become a Marine and go to war, a lot of people always ask me if I was scared, and you just know you're trained. And so when all this stuff happens, it's really calm. It's not there's no panic because you're trained and all that. So even once you hear it happen, the highway to hell thing that they talk about, that thing was pretty gruesome. I not only saw, pictures after the fact, and in today's world, like I said, all those guys have cell phones and they can all take pictures. And there's a lot of pictures that did not come out of that war that a lot of people forget about.
Yeah. Can you describe what the Scud missile looked like and what that entire experience was when you saw it flying over?
It was night, so it just they don't fly straight. You can see them kind of flying in the air, but it's dark, so you can see the actual missile itself now.
So, did you see the actual explosion of the missile, or did you hear about it?
No, the barracks was a pretty good distance away from our base, so okay. we were in probably no danger of that.
So then, how did you come to hear about it? Was it a radio transmission?
Just talk in the barracks or in the barrack tents that we all slept in. Yeah, things travel fast on bases, especially in wartime, for sure. Like, I think some people were removing their gas masks after the war ended before they were told the war ended, because it happened so fast.
So during the war, did you ever have cause to use your engineering skills as they pertain to like explosives and demolition?
No. I did not get to enjoy blowing things up in the war. I think what's interesting, for me is when people talk about the Gulf War and how to explain someone about the Gulf War, I always point them to that movie Jarhead, because I tell them that's the only thing that I know of that can explain what happened. We had a whole bunch of kids trained to do something, and we didn't get to do it. And so when you watch that, and for us, when the first time I saw that, I found out that guy was about a month ahead of me in the in boot camp. You know, and so it's very similar to all of our, you know, the guys who got out right away. We all feel a little sense of wasted time in a way, because we went in to get these skills for our future, and the only skill we got was to take a bunch of stuff to a war and then clean it all back up. I mean, that's all you know. When I got back to Hawaii after the war, that's all I did was clean up gear from the war every day.
Yeah.
Thousands of rifles a day we were cleaning. But for me, that's my experience of the war, and to tell someone else about it. Watch Jarhead. It's pretty much what so many guys had to go through.
Yeah, we're actually in the process of reading Jarhead right now.
So he's from Sacramento too.
Yeah, a lot of the book really hits on the idea of the psychological and mental impact of being in Saudi Arabia for such a long period of time and not knowing when conflict would arise and when you would be called into action. Did that really affect you a lot? How did that time?
Yeah, when I didn't know. I thought we were going to land on an airstrip and get off the airstrip and start rolling and firing. You know, we had no idea what this experience was going to be like. And then when I got to a naval hospital where the 24-hour food was, you know, there, and it was good food, and, you know, guys came in there, it just wasn't that experience that we all thought. But there were guys, they were out in the desert for 9 months, digging holes, moving every day to a different fighting hole, different position, and for what?
So were there a lot of people in the hospital, like a lot of treatment that needed to?
Yeah, they're mostly Iraqi soldiers. They'd fly Iraqi soldiers in and American soldiers. From what I understand, there wasn't a lot of casualties from American soldiers' standpoint, but there were lots of injuries and lots of those things happening for sure. And they'd fly in, and you'd always know, depending on who was called to support the helicopter, if there might be 10 guys, you know, making sure this. But, you know, the Iraqi guys, most of them, even the guys that surrendered, wanted to surrender long before the war started.
So you mentioned that this hospital was in a city.
I was actually in the middle of the desert.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't in a city at all.
So what was the city you mentioned?
Dhahran was the city that it was closest to.
Okay.
It's a port city. I believe I could be pronouncing it wrong. It's a port city. So that's where we all first started when we landed, and then we worked the port there, and we were working for a couple of days with lumber and some other stuff before they sent us to this hospital. They went through us and picked so many of us to go to the naval hospital to work as sentries.
Okay. So while you were in this city, how did the locals respond to your presence there, and how did that affect your experience?
Oh, it's very, very open. It's really neat. You'd have little shops like in a mini mart, and they'd have a wall full of tapes. There were bootleg music that we all like, you name it, from Iron Maiden to, you know, Bill Cosby to anything you wanted, you know, any product you wanted. Coke, you wanted Pepsi, you wanted Sprite, it was all there. They'd get you anything you wanted, and it was pretty neat. And, you know, then they also had prayer rugs or different kind of thing like that, if that was what you needed.
So they were generally welcoming. And
oh yeah, totally. Yep. In fact, we had an incident on. So there's laws in Saudi Arabia. If you get in a car accident, everybody goes to jail, and the judge deals with it. So, well, we got hit by a car in a bus, a whole bus full of Marines going somewhere, and some police or someone show up on the bus with rifles in hand, and they just kind of wave their hands and said, "Oh, American soldiers," and they got off the bus and arrested the guy who hit us and drove off. It was pretty interesting.
So you were personally in this accident?
And the bus, yeah, the whole side of the bus was hit by the car. The car ran a red light, or the bus ran the red light. We don't know.
Were there any injuries related to that?
No, not on the bus. Yeah, it was like running over a little pebble. It wasn't that big a deal, but it was interesting being in the not knowing if it was something coming, you know.
So during this period of time, did you have any experience dealing with prisoners of war in any situation, either in the hospital or with people you know?
Other than occasionally going near the hospital when they knew that they had a few people they were working on a few people, we would be on call, to be closer to the hospital. But other than that, not very close. I never had to walk with any POWs direct or anything like that.
So are there any other stories you'd like to share? Any specific experiences like the bus or the Scud missile?
Well, you know, we had a nice relationship with CBs. CBs are a private entity, civilian entity of engineers, and we had one CB friend who we pranked here and there, and when you're bored, and he'd prank us with, he'd pump out the portables and come spray the barracks with what he pranked out of the portables, and then we'd have to do something back to him, and you know, we had a fun time as much as we could. And then coming home was interesting because, you know, people remember soldiers coming back from Vietnam with all these different parts and tools and knives, and they took us so long to leave because they had to keep searching our gear because people were hiding, you know, knives and weapons, and people are trying to bring back AK-47s, and they lined them up on a curb and called in a tank to, you know, run them over. They wouldn't let us take back anything that was deemed a war prize. You know, we had things we purchased at the store, but they wouldn't let us take back even a pin of an Iraqi soldier's uniform. You know, everything was confiscated from us.
Was there anything that you personally tried to bring back?
No, I bought a prayer rug. I thought that was neat, and some other Middle Eastern items that I felt were nice to have in my life forever, but I had no desire I just wanted to get out of there.
So how many private contractors were present during the Gulf War? And do you know, can you explain?
Well, I know I don't think they were used as much as they used in this recent conflict in Iraq. And that's kind of a broad statement too, because private contractor can be anyone from an assassin to a guy doing taxes for the general, you know. So, but we did have a lot of the CB guys, which were a neat, fun group of guys.
So can you talk about any medals you've received? I know on your biographical data form you mentioned a Kuwait Liberation Medal.
Right. So the Saudi Arabian government created a medal, the Kuwait Liberation Medal, that it's a really beautiful medal and has a little bit of gold, true gold in the top of it, but it was a really nice medal to get from the Saudi Arabian government. Everyone who participated in that conflict got one from, it's pretty nice. And then the National Defense Medal, which everyone continues to get actually. And then good conduct and lots of, I was a good Marine, I'll put it that way, so yeah, lots of different letters of recommendations and stuff like that.
Are there any particularly that mean more to you than others, or that you hold particularly dear?
The Kuwait Liberation Medal was really neat, just that another government recognized what we did to help Kuwait, and so that's promising. I look at it a lot, and I show it to the kids I teach, and they get motivated. And
So you mentioned teaching. How else have your experiences in the military helped or affected your experiences as a teacher?
Well, it gave me a lot of drive. You know, I didn't do well in high school, but when I got out of the Marine Corps, I knew that the only route was to do well in school. So when I went back to college after the military, I got really good grades and I learned how to study well. And so I teach special ed, and so my kids are fully included in the classroom, but a lot of their issues were my issues before I even went in the military, and the military has helped me teach drive to kids, you can't look back, because forget about those problems you got wrong yesterday, we got to move forward. And I think of it that way. Even as a teacher, I'm not only in charge of 17 kids, I'm in charge of 17 adults that work with these kids, on top of working with the district and other colleagues. So if I don't think of it as a military experience while I'm working, then things fall apart. I tell the girls I work with all the time, you guys can all call in sick tomorrow, but I have an army to run. I can't, and that's the way I always address it, as that, and say, I'm going to be here regardless. So that's what, if I wasn't a Marine, maybe I would have left. Said, forget this.
So is there anything else you'd like to talk about related to anything we discussed in the interview?
I think what you guys are doing is a good thing. I mean, educate you guys on experiences and what others have gone through, and I hope talking to other military personnel help you guys in your future to see the picture outside of the books and things that you read, and talking to someone for real maybe give you a better insight, and hopefully you have other interviews that differ, and hopefully differ greatly, because it is a one-on-one personal experience in the military, and you either love it or hate it, or but most people survived it. That can get out of it. We take what we can with us and try to make ourselves and the society around us better.
Well, thank you very much for your time and willingness to share and participate in this project. We all really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
I think that's it for the interview.